Hello. In this video, I'm going to focus on finding a contemporary newspaper article, which is part of nearly every student experience in LRA as part of LRA number 1. Right now, the database we're recommending for finding a contemporary newspaper article is called ProQuest Global News Stream. And if you look here under question number 1, and by the way, that current news article will typically be question number 1. If I scroll down, you can see here that there are links to pertinent databases. ProQuest Global News Stream right here that I'm mousing over, and a second one called Nexus Uni. We recommend probably using the ProQuest database first, just because it has slightly better international coverage, and because for your RCI project, you need to have an international flavor to your work. That tends to be the one that works the best. Before we actually go into Newsstream, though, I want to explain quickly sort of the broader news context. You know, obviously, that on the internet and beyond, you can get news from a huge variety of places with vastly different levels of accuracy, thoroughness, and credibility to those news stories. Most newspapers provide at this point some kind of web content, as do almost all news outlets. One of the reasons why, and by the way, you can use any news outlet, or at least most instructors let you use any news outlet in terms of getting a story for LRA number 1. One of the reasons, though, that we suggest you use one of the library databases is that it indexes or pulls together and makes searchable hundreds of newspapers with obviously hundreds of thousands of articles within them, all in one place. And in order to get into that database, into that system, the news agencies have to have a significant amount of journalistic integrity, earning them labels as authoritative news sources. So that's why we suggest that you would use something like ProQuest Global News Stream. I'm going to go ahead also, though, and click on this newspaper's libguide to just show you which is right here. Highlight it for a moment. This also is a place you can go to find a wider range of newspaper databases that we have, the complete set. We have more than 2, as you might imagine. So that libguide looks like this. Hopefully it'll render here in a moment. And so here's a section called Popular Newspaper Databases. It includes ProQuest Global News Stream right here and Nexus Uni, and then a variety of other ones as well. Some of these, though, have historical newspapers only, and so we don't want to use those, obviously, for LRA number 1. But you might actually find that there's a database given your particular topic that might be a little bit better than Newsstream among this list. So I wanted to just show you that there is a broader list here too that you potentially might want to use. So back to our LRA text, I'm going to go ahead and use the hyperlink here to click into Global News Stream. If you are off campus going into the database or any WSU subscription database, you may need to log in like I am currently. And to do that, you just use your WSU network ID and password. The same thing, for example, that you use to log into my WSU or into your online course spaces as well. So here is what Global News Stream looks like, its interface. And I'm going to go ahead and use a topic which hopefully fits the mold for an RCI semester project topic. I'm looking at the historical development of the Japanese education system. So I'm going to type in my query here, and then I will explain why I'm typing what I'm typing, make it a little bit bigger as well to see. So I'm using two separate lines here. On the first one, I have Japan, and then on the second line, I have educate or schooling. And you'll notice that I have an and here between those two. I'm mousing over that because I don't want just anything about Japan, and I don't want just anything about schooling or education. I want things that are at the crossroads of those two ideas. Also, you'll note that I put a star or an asterisk at the end of the terms. That allows you to get multiple suffixes or endings off that beginning word, or in the case of educat, which isn't even a word, just beginning set of letters. So with Japan, I can get different endings like Japan's, possessive, or I can get Japanese. Educat, I could get words like educate, education, educational. For school, I can get school, schools, schooling. You get the idea. So this allows you to get, again, multiple endings. It's a tactic that oftentimes helps you get more relevant results. Now, as I look over on the right-hand side of the interface, you'll notice that it defaults to what's called anywhere, which basically means any field within the system. And by the way, most subscription databases operate in the same way. I just want to show you, though, that there are a number of different other options where you can choose to search. You can choose to narrow it to particular fields. You can actually expand your search as well. So you'll see that there's one here that I'm on now called document text. This will search every word of every article in the system, which can be helpful if you try a search and you're not getting much back. It's a good way to expand your search. I'm going to go ahead and choose one of the common limiters that I use, sort of the opposite idea, not expanding, but limiting, called document title. And I'm going to actually look for document title for both of these. What I'm doing by employing that strategy is saying, you know, I'm really hopeful that among the hundreds of newspapers that are indexed in this system, hopefully there's some good articles that just actually have the words Japan, and then education or schooling or some version of schooling in the title of that article. So that's what I'm hopeful of. Now, if it turns out I don't get anything back or a small number of irrelevant things, well, then I'll have to broaden my search. But typically that's where I like to start and hope that I can get some very relevant and helpful articles right off the bat. I'm going to also come down here and limit, because within the assignment, contemporary is defined as within the last year. So I'm going to limit to the last 12 months. Again, in your particular section of RCI, your instructor might view a contemporary article as something within the last 5 years, or even have a different definition of that. So just pay attention for your particular class. You'll also notice as I scroll down that there are a number of other different ways you could limit by language or different parts of the newspaper, things like that, all of which may be relevant to you or helpful, especially given a particular topic. But I'm just going to keep it simple and go ahead and do a search with that basic setup. So what I'm going to receive here is a set of results. There's 249 of them. And they are, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller again so you can see on the side that they are included across a number of different source types or kinds of news units of various kinds. So, everything from newswire feeds to websites to traditional newspapers and other, whole slew of different things. Your instructor may want you to just limit to newspapers. In this case, I could, if I was in that boat, I could click this button and it would show me just the 94 subset of this 249. Or if they don't mind, if you use other kinds of sources, then you can just look at this broader list. You'll see that each of them has an icon and a word descriptor of what sort of information format it's from. So I'm just going to leave it like this, and again, blow this up a little bit so it's a little easier to see, and look through my list. Now the question becomes, what kind of article would make sense for an RCI project if I'm looking at the history of the Japanese education system? Well, one thing that you don't want for sure is to try to find a newspaper article that describes in some quick summary all about the history of the Japanese education system. That is not what you're looking for. What you are looking for is some sort of evidence that your topic is still relevant today. And the newspaper article should also potentially help you to refine your topic from what most of the time students start off with is a more general kind of topic. So let's look at this first example. So this is an editorial, it's about something about textbooks, high school textbook screening. Okay, so that might get me thinking about, okay, within the more general topic of Japanese education and its history, maybe what I want to focus on is the development of different kinds of curriculum within those systems, including textbooks. We know in the US, for example, that what goes in textbooks is become quite a controversial thing. And historically and otherwise, is that the case in Japan as well? How does their culture reflect what they teach and what they put in their textbooks or things like that? So that could be a topic area that you could look at, and you could use this article to pursue that topic. And then as I scroll down and look at other items in this list, for example, this one, number 7, is an article that looks at some joint work between Japan and the Philippines. And it strikes me that one of the things about Japanese history is that the peoples of Japan have always been very forward about looking internationally and borrowing ideas from other nations to advance their own society in a variety of ways, including their own industry and things like that. So maybe one of the things I might want to focus on is sort of how Japan uses international influence within its education system and how it does that well. And I could use this article as a leaping point for that. As one more example, just to off the cuff here, to scroll down and take a look, here's a interesting looking article. Japanese school mocked after punishing student for plucking her eyebrows. Well, maybe what I really am interested in is a future as a school counselor or a school principal or something, and I'm interested in discipline and student management as part of the educational system. So that might be an interesting thing to look at in terms of Japanese education. Are they very strict in their school system about what they expect of students and their behavior, that kind of thing? How does that affect their educational output, et cetera, et cetera? So that could be another leaping point for you in the process. So those are the ideas to think about. Now, a couple of other quick things, and then we'll close out this video. If you want an article in this system, basically everything in here is in full text. So if I go ahead and click on the full text button, or I click on the title, as I just did, it will open up the full text of the article, which is right here. I'm just scrolling through the article itself. So if I want to keep this article, which you're going to want to do for the purposes of your research in this class, again, it's a semester-long project, you're going to keep an electronic copy. You can download it to your computer, save as PDF. You can certainly email the full text of the article to yourself as well, and print and other kinds of things. I also want to note, if I click this cite icon, that you can cite your article as well. And for RCI and for this project, you will be using Chicago style, the 17th edition. So you'll see here that this citation defaults to APA, which we don't want. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up and come down here to the Chicago area. And what we're looking at is Chicago 17th edition notes and bibliography. That's what we're using, not the author date system, but the notes bibliography system. So if I click on that, that will change this to this particular citation, which I can then go ahead and copy and paste into my own work for the purposes of this class. Now, another thing, one last thing that you might want to check. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. And I am going to bring up the LRA here again. You'll notice that within this question, there's a link to what's called Chicago style for citations. And so I'm going to follow that link, and it'll actually go into the RCI library guide, which looks like this. And it contains Chicago citation information as well, which you'll see that I'm basically mousing over right here. And if I scroll down here a ways, I can find some basic information about, here we go, newspaper, popular magazine articles, and how those citations should look in Chicago style. So you'll want to check with this as well, because this set of Chicago information is actually from the folks at the University of Chicago that make the, that govern the Chicago style itself. So that's probably an important thing that you're going to want to take note of, and always compare something you get from another database to this, this set of information to be sure that you're on the right track. And with that, I'm going to close this particular video. Thank you for watching. And next we will talk about LRA number 1 research questions. Thanks.